Madness would have been the word many ancient Greeks used to describe the roles and freedoms women enjoyed in Sparta. The women of Sparta were unique for the time and would even be unique in today's world. They exercised in the nude, they would use sassy wit when talking to disagreeable men in public, and had an unbelievable relationship with their sons and newborns. For all these reasons and more, we will explore the ancient lives of Spartan women. The women of Sparta were different in many ways. They were athletic, educated, and social beings. Our records that we have learned about Sparta, Spartan society, and Spartan women are archaic Greek poets and later Greek historians. They provide the history and mythology for what we know about Spartan women today. Very rarely will you find a source, or there may be no sources, of Spartans' accounts themselves of Spartan society, as many of the sources we have are from people who lived after Sparta was conquered, as well as people who did not live in Sparta and maybe met only a few Spartans during their lifetime, such as Aristotle. Makeup of a Spartan woman. Well, they actually wore no makeup, and they were renowned for their natural beauty, and they did get a public education, but it was not for career or money. It was to better help them have better sons. It was thought if a Spartan woman was educated, they would have a stronger son, and Spartan women would also often have to take lead of the house when Spartan men were away at battle. So we can see female athletes. Yes, even before the NCAA, the Spartan women exercised outdoors in the nude. So you can see in this picture, these are Spartan women and Spartan men fraternalizing or socializing while exercising outside in the nude. So Spartan women competed in foot races, which they would often do barefoot. This helped keep them athletic. Athleticism and exercise in women was thought to help the process of childbirth in Spartan society. Women also read, they wrote, they studied mosaic, which was music, dance, and poetry. And these dances involved kicks and leaps, or butt kicks and leaps. And they were trained to be fit, but not for combat, although Spartan women may have trained in case there was an attack on the city and the men were not there. So they also did wrestling, javelin, discus, boxing, and pankratron, which is a kind of a mix of boxing and wrestling. And women likely stopped athletics after marriage. And they married late for their time, 18 to 20, and the men and women, they married not too much later, but later than their Athenian or ancient Greek counterparts. So their clothing, when they were not in the nude, they would wear a chiton, and they were famous for wearing a one-sleeve chiton with one breast exposed. And they would sometimes wear this when they exercised if they weren't exercising in the nude or just around town. So, house life of the housewife. Women of Sparta were seen as the rulers of the house, as the men were often at war or training for combat. The men were not very interested in the home life or how the house was run, as men stayed in the barracks among other men in a dorm setting to train for the military until they were 30. So they had really not as much cares as how the house was run. So boys left the house at age 7, and they were raised by a group of men. But until then, ages 1 through 6, they were raised by the mother. The women did not weave. This was left to the lower class people in Sparta, and mostly non-Spartan citizens, which were called helots. And the helot population was maintained through reproduction rather than the purchase of more slaves or more helots. And the helots actually outnumbered Sparta about 7-1 Spartan citizens. And they were always on edge in Sparta, because there could always be a chance of revolt just because of the pure numbers the helots had. And they did speak their own language and live amongst themselves. So, men also often had to visit their wives in secret until age 30, and then they would be able to sleep at home. Men under 30, as we said earlier, slept in the barracks among other men. And a unique aspect of women life in Sparta would be that women could inherit land. This was very rare in that time. Wife sharing. So we have some cool pictures here of the LDS Temple Square in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have a wife swap, and maybe an image that conjures up the term wife sharing today, a 70s wife sharing free love picture. But Sparta had wife sharing, but it was not these examples that we see today. It was not polygamous or wife swap, or it was kind of more free love than these two examples. But Spartan brothers did this as to lessen and prevent the divide of their inheritance into smaller parts. As children produced by the same woman in the same family were seen as belonging equally to all. Or they also did this, say, an unmarried man wanting a child but not the responsibility of a wife and a home outside the barracks, might ask to borrow a wife from a friend or a brother for the purpose of producing a child, hopefully a son. They always hoped for sons as to add to the numbers of the Spartan army. Okay, women in Sparta were witty and social. As we can see in this picture from 300 movie from 2006, it says, "Do not be coy or stupid, Persian. You can afford neither in Sparta." And the Persian says, "What makes this woman think she can speak among men?" And she says, "Because only Spartan women give birth to real men." That is a famous based on a real quote from a Spartan woman, this is King Leonidas' wife. So we'll get to her later. Well, Spartan women were able to fraternize around Spartan men and socialize while exercising among them. This gave them opportunities to inject opinions about political life, which was certainly rare in the Greek world for women to speak on politics. When Sparta fell, some of the time periods, such as Aristotle, linked the freedoms of Spartan women to the demise of Spartan society. But Aristotle might have just been a Spartan hater. Childbirth and children. Children in Sparta may or may not have been judged at birth. This is going off one man's account about 90 years after Sparta was conquered. But here in this illustration, we can see a baby being judged by a group of men in Sparta. Evidence suggests that perhaps only boys were judged, and girls and boys were fed equally in Sparta in contrast to feeding practices in Athens at the time. Now, girls had an on and off education out of the home, but were educated in-house by the mother when not in an outside education setting. Boys were educated outside the home at agoge, and some women were literate in Sparta, ashamed to have cowardly sons, and would even go as far to shun, disown, banish, or kill a son deemed a coward. We can see an example of this in the life of Pausanias. So in the life of Pausanias, he was a Spartan general who was communicating with the Persian king Xerxes and trying to make a deal to conquer Greece and Sparta in exchange to marry one of Xerxes' daughters. And upon the interception of a message carried by a messenger, Pausanias was on his way back to Sparta and knew that there was, say, a warrant out for his arrest in those times, and he took refuge in a temple called the Temple of Athenia, and the Temple Athenia Charlosia, and his mother Thorano immediately went there and laid a brick which she carried with her at the door, saying, quote, "Unworthy to be a Spartan, you are not my son." So she laid the first brick, and they entrapped Pausanias and starved him out instead of killing him. So the Lacedaemonians admired her braveness and intelligence. They then blocked up the doorway with bricks without forcing the supplicant from the temple. So they starved him to death for being a traitor of Sparta. Another famous son of a Spartan would be Aphaetes, and he was portrayed in the 300 movie as a disabled Spartan who was unable to fight under King Leonidas' 300 army, and he was exiled from Sparta in the movie because he was in fear of being judged as a baby for being disabled, as we talked about earlier. But in real life, he was simply a man who told King Xerxes of the goat path that the Persian army could take around the Hot Gates and defeat the Spartans at the last stand of the 300 at the Battle of Thermopylae. Euphrates told King Xerxes about the goat path that defeated King Leonidas at the famous 300 battle. But he in the movie is portrayed as a disowned son of Sparta. And in this painting, we can see a harsh reality of what Spartan mothers expected from sons. We can see that the following scene is described by Plutarch. It, quote, upon handing her son his shield, instructed him to come home, quote, either with this or on it. So it was either you were going to win or you were going to die trying as a soldier in Spartan society, even from the mother. And then we have the laconic wit or laconic phrase, which made the Spartans so famous. And some real examples, and this is how they were witty and social, some real examples as we can see. We read earlier this one. This was from, why are you Spartan women the only ones who can rule men? Because we are the only ones who give birth to men. And this was Gorgo, queen of Sparta and wife of Leonidas, as quoted by Plutarch. And then we have King Philip talking to the Spartan army saying, if I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raze your city. To which the Spartans gave a single word reply, if. See them being smart right there. And this concludes our Spartan women, ancient lives of Spartan women PowerPoint here. And we have some nice DVDs. And if you like this, you might want to check these out. Great, somewhat historical takes on Spartan society. And that's it. Thank you for joining us here in the Secret Lives of Ancient Women course. For Professor America, this was Lives of Ancient Women in Sparta.